Do you just want to hug your buddy and hold him tight? Well, we're going to talk about that today on The Man Space. Welcome to the Man Space podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, spacemen, to another physically intimate episode of the Man Space. Although,
as we are all separate,
we're all, yes, in very different locations. And we'll see if our media lets us down, because my media has been letting me down. Oh, I just thought of another example. It's going to be a good one.
Of
maybe
intimacy?
Of good, deep male intimacy. Shoot. You know, sometimes it's really funny. Sitting in sessions when people say things, it's like, don't laugh at that. Don't make a Steve Carell joke. Like, boy, sometimes it's real hard to remain professional. Especially when your clients are like, they can't wait to jump on that same joke. And it's like, dude, I was trying to be cool about it, and then you made it worse.
Every once in a while that'll happen.
I know, I've had clients interpret my drawings.
Hey, by the way, since we're all big baseball fans, Mike and I just talked about this. Matt, have you seen the way it's basically down to like
the M's and the Rangers and the Astros?
Yeah. And the poor Mariners had to play the Rangers, the Astros, and the Rangers to finish. So it's going right up to like the last game.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting.
It's not even October baseball yet. It's
not
September.
exciting. The Yankees are done. I don't care anymore. And the Kansas City Royals never had a shot anyway.
Baseball season. Hey, actually, the Kansas City Royals, like, I think 2 times in a row, swept the Astros.
Maybe.
Just going to flash this early.
Oh, geez.
You've got a Yankees sign behind you and a Mariners jersey behind you.
Yeah, Matt, represent.
Matt's got to represent. I want to say that did they even break 500? I'm not sure they broke 500, dude. The Royals.
The Yankees?
No, the Yankees.
Oh, no, they didn't.
Barely broke 500. The Kansas City Royals were 54 and 103. So that whole saying, everybody wins 54, everyone loses 54, it's what you do with the other 54 that matters. They barely made that saying true. Because they almost didn't win 54 games.
Man. Kansas City. Oh, they're
they're not even the worst. The Oakland Athletics are the worst.
48 and 109.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I heard though? Aren't they moving to Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Is that actually happening?
The Athletics.
Yeah. I thought it was only like rumored to be happening and that they were trying to stop it.
No, the last I heard it was happening. And so initially they boycotted by no one showing up to the game, and they got made fun of because they're like, well, how's that different from any other A's game? And so then they boycotted by having everybody show up to a game. And I thought, well, yeah, you guys needed to have done that all along. That's why you're leaving.
So on to the topic. So you guys have not seen these things. I'm just going to have to describe them to you. Some of the spacemen might have seen these things. I have a real issue. Yes, Mike?
Oh, I think you're choosing some pretty obscure shows. So,
oh, not at all.
Well, sorry, dude. They're obscure.
Okay. No, one of them is not obscure. The other 2 are obscure.
RRR.
That one's obscure.
Oh, that's funny. I think that's
Omens.
The least obscure of the 3.
No. Good Omens is not obscure at all.
I think it's at least as obscure as Our Flag Means Death. I'm saying obscure in I don't think a lot of people watch.
You're wrong.
I'm not.
Good Omens was originally a book.
I know.
And then they made it a 1-season series for that book. But then it did well enough that they made a 2nd season.
Right.
Trust me, dude. People freaking love the 2 dudes
and
in it. So for sure, people have seen Good Omens.
Right.
Right. And Terry Pratchett. Pratchett?
I don't know who Terry Pratchett is.
They wrote it together. So it doesn't matter. So 3 shows I'm going to mention today, and we'll go into a few others that are good representations, and I'll explain up front why these things bother me. So I will also give a disclaimer later after I explain this. Can you disclaim later?
What would that be?
At that point, I just feel like it's an explanation. Yeah.
A justification, perhaps. So here's my beef. We'll start with Good Omens because that's the bigger one, I think. And then Triple R or RRR or Rise. Oh, I can't remember what it is, but I'll get to that one later. So my biggest issue is with this show, Good Omens. So the idea behind Good Omens is that there's basically an angel, in short, a gross oversimplification, an angel and a devil, and the apocalypse or the end of the world is coming. And this angel and this devil, as you go along, you find out actually they're friends and they care about each other and they kind of look out for each other. And then the end of the world gets kind of, in a stupid way, just kind of diverted and doesn't happen. Then they make season 2. And in season 2, they kind of give you the backstory of this angel and this devil. You have, I just totally drew a blank on his name, the angel's name, and someone who's listening is probably saying his name out loud. Oh my gosh, I can't, whatever, it doesn't matter. The devil's name is Crowley. It's David Tennant plays him. And, I almost had it. The angel's name doesn't matter. So they show you that actually in the very beginning of time, essentially that these two were actually angels together when they met. And then Crowley kind of falls, becomes a fallen angel, becomes a devil. And in season 2, they show you how these two have developed over the history of mankind. They show you how they've developed this kind of deep relationship with each other, very close. They know each other very well. They kind of mess with each other, but they also, Aziraphale, that's his name of the angel, came to my head. But they also, they clearly care for each other and have been through a lot of rough times with each other. And then I actually really appreciated, I kind of felt like I think I know where they're going to go with this, but they hadn't gone there yet. Like I thought, I think they're trying, because Aziraphale is a little bit, I guess you could say effeminate in his mannerisms. So it felt like they're telling us he's gay, or that maybe he has different kinds of feelings for Crowley, but you don't really get that. To me, you didn't get that sense. So it goes along, you just see these two men who have this really deep, great love for each other. And then in like near the end, spoiler alert to anybody watching this, sorry, who wants to go watch. Near the end of this, essentially two humans have to tell Crowley, like, hey, you have feelings for him. And suddenly it's not just that they are really deeply, two men who deeply love each other, but now apparently because he was told by two people, he has feelings for this other angel. So it really bothered me. Now this happens again that happens in a different show, that one called Our Flag Means Death. If you've not seen it, it's on HBO. It is the story of, we'll just say pirates. I think it's written by, but also he stars in, it is Taika Waititi. Mm-hmm. And also another dude who's from Flight of the Conchords, who is awesome. And as the show goes along, who's in it from Flight of the Conchords?
Yeah.
I'm totally drawn by their manager, whose name I can't remember now.
Oh, so not like one of them.
No, not one of the Conchords.
Okay.
Or I should say Flight of the Conchords. Anyway, as it goes along, you can see these two developing a really strong relationship for each other. And then one episode, it's like suddenly, turns out they have romantic feelings for each other. So one of my issues on both of these shows, it felt like, okay, so it feels like for me, the audience, it was not clear that these two had romantic feelings for each other. And actually in Good Omens, and maybe even in Our Flag Means Death, it didn't seem to be clear to the actual characters either. They were like told, oh, by the way, you have feelings for each other. It's like, oh, okay. So it feels like, now, this is my disclaimer. I have zero issue. Like if I'm watching this show and they're saying, here's these two men, and they're building a chemistry between the two of them that is romantic, and I know these two have feelings for each other, and they have a relationship with each other, a romantic relationship. I think, cool, great. My issue is that they were showing us these two characters who have these strong feelings for each other, so clearly, therefore, they must be gay. Now, I have one other example. This is actually, I think I've mentioned this a long time ago, like 2 years ago. There was I think they called these two skeletons the lovers. I don't know if you guys remember this. They like dug up some bones of these two skeletons holding hands. Do you guys remember this at all? No. So they found these two skeletons holding hands. Hence, they named them the lovers. But then, as they did some testing on them, they found out these were both men. So then, either because two men can't hold hands and not be gay, or because they'd already named them the lovers, so we have to keep this story going. They said, "Oh, these two men must have been gay." And all these people came out and were like, or it could have been that when these two men died, which was, forever ago, that maybe they were both soldiers who were dying alone and wanted just to be held by somebody. And like, I want to feel close to somebody. You don't even have to be dying to do that. And we've talked about this on this show before, that like every other culture, not just ours, but most other cultures seem to be okay with men showing physical affection for each other and not having that mean anything about their sexuality. So I think I have this issue because I was so disappointed, not in the fact that they were gay, but in the fact that it's like, well, how come they can't just have really strong feelings for each other and not be gay? And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. After, that's what I wanted to say, after I get to this movie, Triple R.
What do the R's stand for? Do they not tell you?
They do tell you.
Rise, roar,
it's like
revolt.
Rise, Revolt.
No, it's Rise, Roar, Revolt.
Rise, Roar, Revolt. So it's a Bollywood movie.
It is not a Bollywood movie.
Phenomenal. If you've got okay, fine. It's an Indian-made film.
Sorry, the director was apparently very clear. It is not a Bollywood film. It's from Telugu.
You just,
yeah, dude, I did research.
I will say
I'm a freaking dork, and you know it.
Brotherly love.
There was there was some controversy with this film when they put it on Netflix because they dubbed it into Hindi, I think, and they were upset about that. So there was some controversy around some of that stuff. But anyway, it's in an Indian-made film about these kind of Indian heroes, I guess. And it's very, like, if you have the time, sit down and watch this movie. In fact, go get some delicious chicken korma from Tarka Indian Kitchen and watch this movie.
Was that a product placement?
Today's episode we brought to you. I wish they'd give me chicken korma for life. I love that stuff so much. So in this movie, these two men meet each other. And it's a very kind of like a fairy tale type, like Davy Crockett, or I know Davy Crockett's not a fairy tale, but like the way the story is told.
That's awesome.
No, it's the way his story gets told. Or like Paul Bunyan, like this kind of heroic,
larger than life type thing.
Yes. So like one guy's like wrestling a tiger, like. And there's a scene at the end. This isn't spoiling anything. Where one of them's breaking the other one out of prison, but he can't move his legs, so he puts him on his shoulders. And he's got two guns, two shotguns, or like rifles. And at some point, they like have to kill somebody. So the guy on the bottom leans way back while the other one's on his shoulders, so he can like double shoot people. It is like it's so stupid, but it's the coolest scene. I was like, Becky, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in a movie before. So. In the beginning, though, there's this like almost like at some point it looks like they're running through the Swiss Alps. I'm sure it's the Indian Alps with those sort of thing, but they are like wrestling with each other and loving each other. And one of them's got the other one's on his shoulders doing squats, and they're laughing together. It's like that was when the director's like, "No, I specifically did not want to imply anything. I just wanted to show two men who really deeply loved each other in a very deep, intimate way, and that's it." So the thing that this is now this long rant that probably Spaceman skipped ahead like 10 to 15 seconds because like, is Rob still talking? I look at this and I'm very bothered by the fact that it seems like in media, and then therefore, because that's so informative of what we do as a culture, in our culture, it is like you cannot, any closeness that comes from one male to another must mean that you're gay. And I just wanted to quote Seinfeld and say, not that there's anything wrong with that, because that's not my issue. My issue is saying it's bad to be gay. Actually, in some ways, I think that's part of what this thing indirectly or unintentionally promotes. among people who aren't gay. It's like, oh, so I can't have those feelings. If I have those feelings, it must mean I'm gay. So I should not have or express those feelings for other dudes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, given all of everything I just said, we'll just say that because I explained a bunch of stuff, and Mike may have some comments about the cinematography of Triple R. But
Haven't seen it.
tell me if you like. Tell me your thoughts on everything I just said. If that's too broad, you can tell me to narrow it down.
You have thoughts, Mike?
Sure.
I've got some if you don't.
No, go ahead and start.
Okay. No, I have had similar conversations about different movies or different shows. I think it's a really tough time because there are two super important narratives that that need space and time. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about how things that didn't look gay were like the way that they emerged in their relationships, in gay relationships. So it's like, on the one hand, I really want representation in media, and like, I want to see my story portrayed. So, like out of a desire to see that portrayed, I might identify in a different way. As if I were a gay man, I might identify differently with some of those interactions and think, yeah, that's how I expressed myself. And I knew I couldn't really take it any further than that. Right. So I had to kind of stay hidden about it. So I'm identifying with this. And then you have men who are like, oh my gosh, like straight men who are like, man, like, you know, I've been taught to feel weird about that, but I kind of wish I had a friend like that, you know? So it's like two narratives that I think can unintentionally cancel each other out. Like, which one is it? Instead of like art is supposed to be, like, let it be, you know, what it means to you. But I've had that same feeling before too, where it's like, maybe because people who are wanting to identify with gay relationships, looking at situations like you're describing, and they're wanting their story told, are going to be like, see, you know, that's what it was like for me.
Right.
And then straight men might be like, well, hold on, like that, don't hog it all. I want to, like, that's kind of how that's where some of my indignation has come from, in interpretations where a director has said, this was my intent. Right. And then somebody saying, no, the director really meant, and I'm like, well, don't speak for the director. Right. But for me, I'm like, so I don't get to have that because I'm straight, like that. That doesn't feel right. But I do think we've talked about this before. It's really, really interesting when you look at studies of sexual arousal, especially when it comes to stuff like this, because I need to drill down into these studies, because I'm like, how are you measuring sexual arousal? Was it like self-report, or did you actually have, like, you know, biological markers or things like that? But I would assume it's that, like, it's more like they're not relying on self-report. Otherwise these data would be like totally skewed. But but when women watch like gay, bi, and straight porn, they're equally aroused by all of it. Right. When straight men watch gay and straight porn, only aroused by straight porn. When gay men watch gay and straight porn, only aroused by gay porn. And I'm like, that's a really sharp bifurcation in our sexuality. Right. Like, and I kind of wonder how that plays out, where we have to define it, right? Like, there was a whole like no homo movement where all these guys in like 2010 and around there were posting pictures of them and their friends, but they're like, hey, here's my friend, no homo. And it's like, I have to clarify, right? And so has that also like led to kind of the other side, where it's like, nope, it's all, these are two gay guys for sure, because they're holding hands, right? Like, we just get so weird. We can't like say, hey, yeah, I can be straight and hug my friend, and you can be gay and hug your friend too, right? Or hug your boyfriend. Like, it's got to be either or for us for some reason.
That's a good point. And I have thoughts on that. But Mike?
Like, one, I think a counter to this, to the two shows you talked about, right, is Schitt's Creek. David, I don't know, season 3 maybe. Anyway, starts in a relationship with, I can't remember the character's name, but his cover of that Tina Turner song is freaking amazing. But he, like, it's in fact, Daniel Levy talked about how we weren't, we weren't trying to make a political statement. He goes, in fact, we wrote from the idea of what if we lived in what if this fictional town, Schitt's Creek, was in a place where nobody cared and it wasn't a point of anything. Like, it was just, this is the way it is. And you can kind of get that, right? Like, it's just this assumption of like, yeah, no one's going to bat an eye when he starts dating and is being pursued by this guy, and he's pursuing this guy. Like, it doesn't faze anybody. And I think it follows much more of what I would call the traditional like rom-com of pursuit. It just happens to be between two men.
Mm-hmm.
That's the flip side, I think, of what you're talking about, right? The thing that is interesting to me that you're pointing out is that in both of these shows, and I haven't seen either of them, of Good Omens and Our Flag Means Death, is that it's an outside person telling them. Like, they wouldn't have known if... Mm-hmm. But at first I thought, oh yeah, that's kind of frustrating, except no, that happens in straight rom-coms too. Someone is often telling one of the characters, hey, spoiler alert, you have feelings for that person, dummy. Oh, you're right, I do. And so I think, no, like, part of it is maybe they're just lazy writers and are just borrowing the trope of
they are on strike
rom-coms, right? I mean, how did they get anything done? Where it's the classic, right? Like, this is how it is. Like, I am too whatever to realize what my feelings mean. I need an outside person to tell me this is what I'm feeling. And so from that aspect, I think, yeah, like I could see it. Like, I can see why they would do it that way. But at the same time, it is frustrating to me that, like, I remember when we were, late 90s, early 2000s, when dudes would hug, it was always the triple pat on the back, right? And the joke that was said all over the place was, you pat 3 times because you're saying, I'm not gay. And you never saw two dudes just hug without patting. And so I think, yeah, there is that idea that permeates society that says, no, you can't have a physical, intimate relationship with someone and not be gay. And if you do, then you must be. And just maybe no one's pointed it out to you yet. So someone should probably tell you. So consider this your wake-up call. If that's what you're craving, spoiler alert, you're gay. Which I think, well, no. Like, societally, you look at Shakespeare and even the Bible will often talk about men kissing each other on the neck and on the face. They weren't gay. That was simply an accepted form of greeting, right? And in, like, I was talking to, I think it was someone from, I can't remember which South American country, but we were talking about this, like the way that they'll greet one another. And he goes, oh yeah, it's not abnormal. He pointed out, like in Europe in particular, for men to kiss each other on the cheek when they greet each other. And he goes, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just a sign of affection. Like, that's it. And I thought, oh, not here. Like, when I had a friend who started kissing me on my head or kissing me on my cheek, it made everyone watching super uncomfortable. I loved it. Like, I love that he did it. And I will often now, I have a couple of friends that I will kiss on the cheek when I see them, because I just, like, I see him and I just feel it. And so I do it. Because I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I know where I'm at. I know what my sexuality is. So if someone else wants to misinterpret it, go ahead. Misinterpret what you want. I'm simply expressing affection for my friend. Anyway, that feels ranty to me, but there you go.
Well, I think Matt and I probably both thought about the same professor when you said kiss on the neck or kiss on the cheek.
I was going to say, I got a kiss on the neck, 3 of them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because everybody that I told that story to either thought he's grooming you, or they had, I can't even remember other interpretations of it, but I'm like, after the fact, telling the story, sure, I could see it in multiple different ways. In the moment, it felt like this guy really is supportive of me right now. Yeah. And it was like, I think I told you the story before when I was standing there talking to somebody and I didn't even know it was him, but he came and put his hand on my shoulder and I just knew. I was like, there he is. It's just like this energy where I'm like, this is this feels so good. Like, yeah.
Yeah. If only he could have followed through on other things. But I that's what I think you both make some good points. And like Matt, when I go back to this thing you're talking about, I think that is true. I hadn't thought about that element of it because it's not been my experience. Like I think Mike, you mentioned romantic comedies, and I think I've always had a problem with that in romantic comedies too. In fact, at some point I feel like I can't watch these anymore. These are so dumb. Um, I don't. This is kind of unrelated to the expression of feelings. I don't like when authors or directors tell me this is what you will feel now.
Yeah.
It bothers the crap out of me. So it's actually sometimes why I hate when they write like an epilogue where they're like, in Harry Potter, it's like, and here's what happened to them 20 years down the road. It's like, just let me pick that for myself. I don't want Christopher Nolan to come out and say, this is what I meant at the end of Inception, just so you know. I think let that be up to me.
Yeah.
But that's a side note. That's a movie thing or a media thing and not so much this feeling thing. But I do think one of the things that, like what I like about what you're saying, Matt, I think, oh, that's true. I think there are tons of people who have felt like this is why with media, we've tried to push so hard into saying, let's represent more people. And I do mean like across the board, like more Asian Americans or Latinos or African Americans or gay people or whatever it is. Let's include all these people so that they can identify with what's on the screen. What's interesting to me about these two that I'm mentioning is it feels like, wait, like it almost felt like, oh, you just took that from me now. And maybe they felt like, maybe like gay people have felt like that when it's like, if they watched it and it wasn't told that these ones actually have romantic feelings for each other, maybe it felt like, well, you took that from me. Because I felt like, well, now this thing that I want to see more of, because I actually think we have this massive population. You might even say 50% of the world of males saying, hey, I want to feel this thing. Whether you're gay or straight, I think we want to feel a deep closeness and connection to each other. But that is grossly underrepresented in media. Way underrepresented. Like there is very few depictions of men just loving each other. And actually, when they do, what happens is, we won't get into the details of this, but people will then spoof that, as Matt, you're saying, from a thing you saw about Lord of the Rings, where suddenly they take that and say, oh yeah, but really it's this. And it's like, well, you just ruined it. How come I can't just love this guy? How come Frodo can't just love Sam? Mm-hmm. And it makes me kind of feel, because I think what it does is actually, I know we don't like this word. My wife actually mentioned this to me. She's like, I know you don't like that phrasing. I'm like, I know, I don't, but it's fine. It does kind of reinforce that quote unquote toxic masculinity, because it feels like what Mike's saying. Oh, I have to make sure that I clarify, or the no homo thing. It's like, I have to clarify I'm not gay, which first of all, it feels like, why? Why is that a bad thing? Like if someone thinks you're gay, so what? Like, does it mean like now you're ostracized from society? Just by doing that, it's actually very dismissive and offensive to a whole group of people. Mm-hmm. So it makes this place where it does have to be very dichotomized. Like, how do I make sure that nobody knows that people know I'm not gay? Or how does maybe a director spell it out and say, just so you know, these two have feelings for each other? It's like, I mean, I knew they did, but let me take that where I'm going to take it. Like, I actually think what happened with Good Omens, I think I mentioned this earlier, is I think after season 1, everyone felt like, well, clearly these guys have feelings for each other, which I did not. I felt like, no, I just think they love each other. And it did feel a little bit like, because there was no book that they were basing this on, this was just them going off into new directions. It felt like a little bit like fan fiction. And took it wherever they wanted it to go. And it felt like you robbed something that was really cool. But if I close my rant there, because I do feel like I want people to be able to, I want men to be able to see normalized, actually, just like Matt, as you're pointing out, that whole, we could just say sexual minority population feeling like, I want to see what I feel normalized, so that I know I'm not alone in this, or I'm not weird, or I'm not whatever in this. I think males want to feel the same thing in this context. Like, I want to know that what I feel is not abnormal. Like Mike, you say if that's what you crave, I think it was you that said that, like But even if you said like, I just crave a man kissing me on the cheek, everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, what are you, gay? It's like, no, why is that? Why can't I just say I want some close intimacy with somebody like that in a very different way than I would with my spouse?
Mm-hmm.
But, and that's, I think, so in my head, I thought about what are some shows besides like that Triple R show, which I'm telling you guys, go watch that show. It is just a fascinating show. But I should say movie. People get confused when I say shows. It is a movie. But I also thought actually of a lot of various scenes in Ted Lasso that do a very good job of like, actually Ted Lasso covers a number of different bases, but one of the things they do a good job with is just showing men who really love each other and know how to be there for each other. We talked about that a couple episodes back of like, they just hugged each other and held each other at some point when they went through something really hard. And there was no implication about what it meant for those two. And as an audience member, I felt like good because there was no chemistry built between the two of them. You can't just suddenly say, oh, and by the way, they have romantic feelings for each other. So that was one I thought of. I did think of Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of, it's interesting actually in both those. It's always these examples of men going through, in some way or another, epic journeys or battles or things together that bonds them together. But that's another one I thought of that feels like, hey, this shows me that this is actually, I'm not saying to think up ideas of other shows that would be good for men to see, because that way we get to see that thing that we all want. It's saying, I want them to see it so they know, hey, we all want this, even though none of us actually want to say it. We all want to feel that closeness to some other male, because it's just like even if you just said it's because we want that closeness to our dads. And eventually either we never got it or it's not what we want it to be, or eventually we lose it. I want that. So go.
So
Ideas.
that was like, as I was thinking about this, I thought it's sports movies and war movies or fathers and sons.
Yeah.
Right. Like I thought of, there's a scene in The Family Stone with Craig T. Nelson and Luke Wilson, and they're at a stadium, and Luke Wilson has just realized that his mom is dying. Right. And he's going, and he and his dad get high. But there's just this, like this moment where they're just kind of together and sitting and feeling the loss that they know is coming of, his wife and his mom. And they just kind of, they're, sitting close together, and it is this intimate moment. And I think, but again, it's a father and son, where we would look at it and be like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's allowed because father and son. And then I thought, like, war movies, you often see that kind of thing, right? Like, it's one of the things that the bond that exists among people within the military is fascinating to me, because it's a level of intimate that I don't think, unless you've been through that kind of experience, you probably don't understand. Certainly, I think I don't, but I think, but then you're also in this area where they don't show physical intimacy, right? Like, yes, they are, like, there's an intimacy that exists there, and we see it often portrayed in film that they will do anything for this guy next to them. But the physical intimacy that we've been talking about doesn't exist there. There was one show that I thought of, and I can't remember which one it is right now. The other one that I thought of that does an okay job of showing it is Scrubs. But even Scrubs, I think, but it's a joke half the time, right? They have this whole, in the musical episode, the whole song Guy Love, about how, hey, this is normal. It's just, it's just a love between two guys, which I think, that's true. Like, good for them. But at the same time, again, it's the joke that they make, like, throughout the series is JD maybe a little gay because of how he feels about Turk.
Yeah.
Right. And JD's whole thing is like, no, let's, like, he's very much like, no, I just love him. And ironically, you watch JD and not JD, sorry, Zach Braff and Donald Faison in real life, and I think, oh no, they are that kind of close. Like, I've seen interviews and heard podcasts and stuff. They are that kind of close. But as far as portrayals, I could think of Scrubs and any number of sports movies I mean, but other ones, like I don't know that I can think of many that really kind of portray, I don't know, what I would consider to just be a normal friendship, meaning like it's not built on this bond of trauma or suffering or something like that. It's just, no, over time kind of what you're trying to talk about in Good Omens, right? Where they just love each other. And you, at the end of the first season, you really feel like they love each other. And it's not that they've necessarily been through traumatic things together. They just have done stuff and been together for so long. They've built this love. I can't think of many shows that portray that, except Scrubs.
Yeah. No, you just made me think of a different side of it too. I'll say this before I forget, then come back to it. But I'm also trying to think of movies or shows where a guy has a really close guy friend, and when he gets a girlfriend, it's kind of implied and it usually gets carried out this way. Yeah, that relationship with your guy friend needs to change or end.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen that the other way around. So I'm thinking of like Psych, for example, like when Sean's thinking about moving in with Juliet, or when he proposes, it's kind of like, oh, what are we going to do with Gus? We need to we have to kind of end that in some way. And they resolve it in a way where basically Gus just doesn't progress at all in his life and just moves to be close to them. So, but
which
I think, and again, that's a good show. What's that?
Well, I was going to say Scrubs, I think, actually does portray that, right? Because Turk and Carla get together early on, and at times she feels like she's competing with JD for Turk's affection, where that relationship continues throughout the entire show, even though both
That's
of them
kind of what
are
I'm saying, though, right? It feels like a competition.
Yeah.
Whereas that is weird. It feels like a competition, but I don't think I've seen that the other way around, where it's like,
that's true, where it's not.
Oh, I feel like your affection for your girlfriend is in competition with me, right? No, the movie I thought of is actually not adults, but it's Luca, and it's a Pixar movie. But so that one has all sorts of interpretations of it. But the director said this is just a story about two adolescent boys and their relationship, like their friendship, basically, is what he said. But it's in Italy, so there's probably like some cultural differences in terms of touch. But yeah, these guys, I think it portrays really well physical touch, the jealousy that comes when, again, because of what I'm saying, a girl enters in, and then one of the boys starts to kind of spend more time with her, and his friend is getting really jealous because I think it's like, yeah, I know this will end, like this is, you're going to leave me. And I think women experience that too. Then now that I think about it, I'm thinking of like, women who have felt like, if I'm the one that I'm not in a relationship, then I lose, but it's a good portrayal of like, how those friendships kind of can transition and evolve. But yeah, I like it because you could tell it deals with a lot of the emotions that go on when it's like, oh man, I'm losing you. And I think again, it's adolescent, right? And so, like we've said before, a lot of the portrayals of adult men in those types of relationships are like, they're just like, they act like teenagers when they're touching each other. It's kind of like this little playful, we gotta or we have to say it's not gay, or we have and maybe it's from what we've said, it's like, that's the last time I had that. So that's all I know. I don't know how to do it in an adult, mature way, where it's okay for me just to give you like a deep hug and just say I really care about you, and let it be that.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening to this thinking, I hope people listening to this don't think like this. To me is not a men versus gay men thing. I think I do think there's, in many ways, I think sometimes when we do this, I think all men kind of lose out, because it does imply, even for a man who is gay, it feels like, so if I express any of those feelings, that also must mean that I have feelings for this person, but they would easily say, no, I don't over here. Yeah. And we could go into, we've talked about this in a long time ago, previous episode about can males have, like a female friend and whether or not that's quote unquote possible or not. But this isn't an issue of one or the other. I think it's kind of like with the Barbie movie thing we talked about. It's like, why does it have to be like a seesaw where one person has to be represented at the expense of the other? And how come it can't just be like everyone wants to interpret all these things all the time? And I think, hey, look, this movie was cool to me, or this scene was cool to me because it made me feel this. It reminded me that I could feel these things. And that's what bothered me so much about Good Omens, was it felt like I can feel these things. And then it was like, but look what happens if you do. It feels like, well, okay, how come I can't just say I felt those things? And maybe somebody who saw the romance part of it would say, I can feel those things. I think, cool. That is the nature, like, as you pointed out at the beginning, man, that's the nature of art. Like, I put it out there and you take it where you're going to take it. I don't have to tell you everything. That ruins the art. It becomes like paint by color. And it's like, it's supposed to look like a tiger.
That's, I studied, right. My bachelor's degree is in English. So I spent 4 years reading novels, and it was often when we would go to write research papers, trying to find statements made by the author about the interpretation of their book was almost impossible. They didn't do it for the very thing that, like, the reasons that Christopher Nolan is like, no, I'm not going to tell you. Like, take from the ending of Inception what you want. Like, I shot the film I'm shooting and that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to tell you what it is. That's for you to decide.
Right.
And I think that's true, where the vagueness of it allows you to see in it and connect with it regardless. And I think that's, anyway, again, I feel ranty right now, but that's part of the power of the vague.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just like pretty much every issue we talk about on here, this is a problem we need to solve as men. Right. And I think that in some ways it's easier to start this conversation with a gay man. Mm-hmm. Like, I've had conversation with gay guys about this, and like, they've been really productive about, and supportive. Right. And I think, like, both sides. And I think, straight men need to be talking to each other about this. If you've never talked to a gay man, talk to a gay man. Talk to him about why physical touch is important for you, what it means to him, and like what his experience has been. Gay men, I don't know, maybe talk to each other a lot more about that than straight men do, probably. So these are just conversations that, like, again, be the person that, like, risks saying something that makes everybody feel uncomfortable. And then when they do, and they laugh and they make jokes, stay with it. Say, knock it off. Like, it's not about that, right? Like, this is important to all of us, right? And usually what you get is like a bunch of like, oh yeah, you're right, sorry, dude. Like, and then you can get into a deeper conversation about it, because like we I think talked about this website a ways back, but at some point this was extremely normal in American society, right?
Right.
And I don't know when it changed sometime in the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was that changed it. But, like, if it's healthy and important, and especially what we talked about with, like, male loneliness and just not feeling connected, this is one aspect of connection, right? But if we can't talk about it and we can't figure out, like, why did we either give this up or lose it, like, we can reclaim it and create it again.
Yeah.
But requires us talking to each other.
Yeah. So I guess in essence, we're leaving with a similar message we've said before. We're calling all spacemen to arms. They've got to go put their arms around each other. Huh? And then catch us next time on the Man Space. It's guy love between two guys. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to
rate
and
review.
Please, we desperately need it.